Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Ball and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Academy podcast. On our show here at the Wellness Academy, it is my job to distill all things wellness and attempt to break down from all our different coaches, experts and guests their wisdom and knowledge so you can apply it to your own life. Our guest today is Richard Hill, aka Tricky Ricky on Instagram. Trick is a UK CrossFitter and a CrossFit gym owner. He owns Gritstone CrossFit up in Manchester and is a sponsored athlete as well. He's also an incredibly smart, humble, intelligent, emotional human being who we had a fantastic time interviewing recently, just before the Christmas period. We really delved into some deep weeds as such, you might say, in this interview, and without saying a significant amount more, I really hope you guys enjoy this emotional, intelligent, wonderful conversation with Tricky Ricky. So, welcome to the podcast. What would you like me to call you?
You can choose. Some people call me Tricky, some people call me Rick, Richard. I just don't call me Rich. I feel like I'm an officer in the Air Force again. How do you do, Rich? How do you do?
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, Trick, because that was what I was going to ask you about first and foremost. Like, as far as like a bio goes, you talked to me a little bit beforehand, and then after we've spent the day off and on at the local Horcross Hall having a good spa day, one of your coaches was talking to me that you were in the RAF. Mm-hmm. But I found even more interesting intelligence division.
Yeah, so I finished my college, went to university, did sports science, did a bit of a ski season, taught flying trapeze in the United States.
Of course you did.
And then I came home, got fit and joined the Royal Air Force. I decided to join the intelligence branch as I've always been attracted to kind of cool stuff and gadgets and gizmos, but also kind of current affairs, politics, those kind of things. Did that for just over 6 years and then left, and that's kind of the crossover was started CrossFit when I was in the military, left, opened my gym, so that's my kind of career structure from start. You
taught flying trapeze?
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, baby. So yeah, I was in America and I was over there to I actually used to race mountain bikes and BMXs. Okay. So I was over there to teach children how to mountain bike and BMX.
Whereabouts did you go?
I was in Pennsylvania. A lot of kids camps in that kind of like north of New York area, where a lot of the rich kids from the New York area move north to the Catskills Mountains and they go to summer camps. I went to a particular rich camp where they had this great big flying trapeze, and I was there setting up the camp with everybody, set up the rig, and I was in a bar one night having a few beers with the staff, and this bloke, I didn't know who he was at the time, but he looked a bit crazy, was juggling, and I can juggle, so I juggled like glasses or something, and then he did something and I did a back somersault. And he was like, "You can do stuff," and I was like, "I can do stuff drunk." And we've all got drunk confidence, right? And then the next day I went on the trapeze and I just found the basics really comfortable and happy, and I enjoyed it. Most people, obviously, being quite high up and quite a scary thing, they kind of get overwhelmed by that feeling, but I suppose I just literally enjoyed it. And I did 2 full summers, like big long summers, where I'd teach children how to fly trapeze, do these little shows and do these little like events on the rig, and then travel a USA afterwards. I absolutely loved it. And then I decided there was a contract in the Caribbean that me and this girl were going to go and take to fly trapeze, and it was like a thing of like, should we make this into a job? And we came home and thought about it. She decided to take the job, and I decided to join the Air Force.
Wow.
And obviously the cheesy answer to that is I swapped one type of flying for another. You are welcome.
I feel like we can end the podcast there on that note. That'd be the tagline that I'll have to do. Yeah, that's cool. So you can juggle, you can backflip, you can trapeze. Yeah, fair enough. More talented than me, and we haven't even started on the fact that you can do CrossFit
just
very
weird
well.
Stuff, mate. Just weird stuff. I can't do anything useful.
So, to be fair, I remember a time where I think if I'd have got in, my dad would have probably been as happy as I could have ever made him, because I took the aptitude test for the RAF at 16 and then did the interview and it didn't go well.
16's very young though. 16's, I mean, I've just helped a girl through my box. She's just turned 18 this year, joined the Royal Air Force as a weapons tech, And she's just passed out now, literally this week. Dad sent me a photo. We're
What's
all
her
very
name?
proud of her. Shannon.
Congratulations,
Very,
Shannon.
very proud of her. But 18, I see how young she is, and I think it's such I'm proud of her, but it's such a big commitment. I was, in my mid-20s when I joined, which I think, having seen a little bit of the world and made a few decisions, I decided that this was a career, and I feel like I entered it, and it made life a little bit easier, because when you're on some of these, training, when you're in training, you do a load of stuff that's just stupid and irrelevant, and it's part of the training process to get you kind of put you into the system a little bit. Mm-hmm. And other people, the younger ones, are all complaining, why are we digging holes, why are we doing this, why are they getting us up? And I just kept thinking to myself, I could be having a day job here, I could be in an office somewhere, and you can't help but find the entire thing a little bit more manageable on the basis that there's a real world out there where you're not sleeping in the forest. And although sleeping in the forest is quite unpleasant, it's not half as unpleasant as being attached to a desk for 9 till 5. So I found training quite fun, actually, because I was a little bit older. She's young, but I'm hoping she takes to it. She has taken to it pretty well so far. So I'm seeing it. She's actually coming back to the box to take part in our little Christmas throwdown. So
cool. Are there any cool stories you can share when you were in?
From intelligence?
Yeah, because when I contemplated going in the army many, many years later, and it was the intelligence. I find that idea of doing intelligence really, really interesting as well.
Is there anything I'd say from intelligence?
You can't really tell.
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. I suppose the bit that it's not telling you anything, but I suppose it's the bit that I found most exciting was that you get to see often the news before it's news and when it's actual happening. Okay. So watching Libya disrupt over a weekend. I remember on the Friday we had a brief from a very, very senior guy who assured us all that Libya was going to be fine, that Gaddafi was absolutely stable, that it was, you can depend on this regime to stay strong and blah, blah. And then I was working over the weekend, and literally in one weekend, we watched the entire thing turn upside down before our eyes. And before the news, before everyone else sees it, we're like, on Monday morning, the world is going to have changed. You know what I mean? And we came in on the Monday, and our morning brief was attended by quite senior staff. And then the bloke who was running our unit, I can't talk about necessarily exactly what, but in our area, called in a 1-star and a 2-star when he saw the brief and was like, "I'm sorry, but you need to do this brief once, and then we need to start moving on this," because the world had changed. And I found that the most exciting thing, because everybody else is on catch up. We're watching it, we're seeing it. And the thing about intelligence is that it's not about us knowing something quicker than the enemy. Knowing something quicker than anybody else about the enemy. It's that intelligence is about making predictions about what will happen next and how it will happen and where we can affect it and where it will be affected. So what I found exciting was exactly that guy who'd given us the idea of Libya had done his best educated guess of what would happen next, and it had all been absolutely Pete Tong. Come the Monday morning, we're the junior officers, we're these new guys, but we've seen it all happen, and they're literally 1-stars and 2-stars staring at you going, so what's going to happen next then? Because that's your job. Your job isn't to report the news. We've got newsreaders. You're intelligence, my friend. And unfortunately, someone's got to stick their neck out and say, how is this going to pan out for the next 48, 72 hours? Because we need to make plans based around that. Yeah. And it's so exciting to be part of the crest of that wave as it falls.
Yeah. Does that, you said that when you went in the RAF and you did your training, you had perspective that made the training easier. Is that perspective of doing those kind of things made running a CrossFit box easier, or what you've come out, or is it?
No, life. I would say there's an element of once you've opened Pandora's box, you can't put the things back in again, and you'd quite like to. I sometimes, seeing the way the world changes and seeing how things are happening in the global situation, I lose sleep over that, because I've had to work in areas where I for example, looking at those revolutions, what do they call it, the Jasmine Revolution or whatever, when it's, across the Middle East and North Africa, all of these countries are slowly going through revolutions to change their leaders, such as Libya. They went one after another, and Syria, into the parts of Turkey and Iraq. You look at the instability of those areas, and then you learn about them, and you see how close everywhere can be in a matter of weeks from being ordered to disordered. And I don't think that's given me a level of confidence, perhaps, in general life. So some people I just don't read the news because I don't want to worry about it. Unfortunately, I've read it, but you know what I mean? I've seen it, and now I can't unsee it. And a little bit of me is I suppose we'll always live in that little bit of worry where I'm I've kind of seen what chaos maybe looks like, and a little bit it doesn't make me easy about it. So no, I don't think I feel that makes me feel more stable about running the gym. If anything, sometimes I want to speak to my friends and be like, is everything okay? Can you just reassure me that the world's all right still?
Interesting. And the coming out, what made you decide to leave?
There was a mix of things that caused me to leave. One of them was that I suppose on a very practical level, I wanted a longer term relationship, and I knew that I'd work probably better outside of the Royal Air Force with travel and movements. But also I have a passion for my job, and I enjoyed going exercises, I enjoyed going operations. So that was always going to get in the way of a long term relationship. It's hard leaving a partner at home for those periods and pretending that, you don't really want to, because you do actually. You know what I mean? You kind of want to go away and do cool stuff. So that's important. I also knew that a couple of the jobs that were coming up in front of me probably wouldn't be perhaps as fun as the jobs I'd had behind me. I'd had the opportunity to do some really exciting stuff, and relative to my branch, that is.
Yeah.
Relative from my branch, some of the cool jobs, and perhaps the next 5, 6, 7 years might not be half as much fun. So that was in my mind. And then I had a tour in Afghanistan where I lost a very close friend. Well, I say a very close friend. He was a very important person to me at the time. He was basically the other Royal Air Force intelligence guy in theatre in Afghanistan at the time. So we were working consistently between us. He was the person I'd kind of lean on. He'd lean on me. Through our training experience, we went through a very similar training pattern. He was on the course ahead, so would provide advice and mentoring. And then when I arrived at my first job, he was basically my mentor.
Wow.
So we arrived in Afghanistan together, and we had this job opposing each, we call it oppose, together. And then unfortunately he was killed in an accident with a helicopter. So I just changed my feeling towards it.
A bunch of things happened at once. And
I think what it was just so many things together that you just think to yourself, there's a change coming, a good change coming. And I'm ready for, whatever I want to do. Mm-hmm. And I felt like the Royal Air Force only offered me certain ways forward, and I wasn't happy with just those choices, so I decided to look further afield. It was actually a padre from the Royal Air Force who told me to quit. I sat down with him for counselling. I had 10 counselling sessions when I got back. And after about my third session, he went, I'm probably not allowed to say this to you because I'm probably supposed to help you in recruitment terms, but I really think your future lies outside of the Royal Air Force. He said, I think there's not enough capacity for you to express yourself. There's not capacity to help people inside this service. And I literally left his counselling session, went to the J1, and I put my notice in. He'd basically expressed everything I'd felt.
Okay. You think he found a way to say in words what you'd been thinking? Yes.
Through the counselling, obviously, in just a few sessions, I was talking about much more grand ways of affecting people. Do you know what I mean? Of talking to people and dealing with things. And I had levels of frustration in the future career jobs I would have to be able to create a positive change, very admin-based jobs or management-based jobs. I had to move from being in tactical, punchy areas or at least operationally effective areas to areas where you have to just start to just simply manage people or manage a non-developing situation. Do you know what I mean? There were just more administrative jobs than others, and they're not for me.
Yeah.
I want to do stuff and affect people. He said the same thing, and he was like, if you know, the changes that you want to have on people's lives and how people do things, it's going to be too constrained in the next period of your life. And he said, there's a whole world of things you can do. And like I said, we talked about the flying trapeze, we talked about CrossFit, we talked about, at the time I was competing pretty successfully, and he was like, with all of this ahead, do you really want to be given your next posting that you haven't decided for how long and then just do it? Nah, mate, not for me, that.
So then how long after how old were you when you left?
So Gritstone is in its 5th year now, so it would have been, I left in May 2015. So what is it now? 2019? I was 30,
We're just
31.
about to be 2020, aren't we?
Yeah, so 30, 31.
Okay. And you, sounds like it was relatively quick from leaving the RAF to starting your CrossFit gym, Gritstone.
Yeah, so I got an invitation to go out for these tryouts for a CrossFit kind of event that was going on in America at the time called the Grid League.
That was...
It was like
what was that?
CrossFit.
What was the other thing that tried to start alongside CrossFit that some CrossFitters did in America?
That was it.
That was that?
That was that. So
And
Alex Smith
well,
and Catherine Davis-Dottir and all those guys. It did, but the bloke who was running it just piled all the cash into like private jets to smash himself around. And, like, he hired Madison Square Gardens for one of the events. Okay. So rather than like build a business, he was like, I've got loads of investors, I've got loads of money, let's have it. Like he paid Klokov like hundreds of thousands to come out and be part of it.
Okay.
Like literally private jets, Madison Square Gardens, Dmitry Klokov, like all the big guys. And it clearly just went bust. Like it's not going to happen. CrossFit isn't that famous that you can fill Madison Square Gardens.
No.
Afraid to say. So anyway, went out to America, did a bit of that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And then in that period of time, I was reflecting on what I wanted to do and my future and stuff. And my mate Seth, he's like one of my best friends in the world, like my big brother. He was a US Marine Recon, and then became a medic in the for emergency services in the US. Mm-hmm. And then me and him I was just staying at his house for months at a time, and we were just like doing CrossFit, riding motorbikes, getting tattoos, climbing a bit, hanging about. And he was like, "What are you gonna do with your life?" I was like, "I don't know." And over a period, I created this idea that I was going to open a gym, but it might be a different kind of gym, the kind of gym that I was training him at, a gym that kind of like, there were mums in there, but they were like savage athletes in there. Like he would literally ride in there on a motorbike, get off, snatch a few 100-kilo snatches, destroy a workout, and then get back on a motorbike and drive off. But equally, like one of his best friends in the gym is like a mum of two who, is doing some sled pulls to get a posterior chain stronger, and she's not snatching because she's still learning the basics. You know what I mean? Like it was just this mental, inclusive environment where people could come, but also like a level of, like I've always said this, there's a level of self-expression in what I do, like dance. Do you know what I mean? Dance is a physical concept, but it's an emotional, let's say release almost.
Yeah.
Well, CrossFit, I suppose that's why people started probably watching me do Instagram, because I slam bars and I jump around and I get excited and I dance and I do all of the things that are probably more than just lifting a barbell, because lifting a barbell I'm very moderate at, but celebrating lifting a barbell, I tell you what, I can win a prize for that.
Where did the name Gritstone come from?
So it's basically that I live in Saddleworth, or I was brought up in Saddleworth, and the foundational rock there is Gritstone. It's a rock that climbers love because it's so abrasive and aggressive, but you can climb almost impossible looking faces on the basis that you can get so much from it. So I love that idea that creativity can come out of something impossible, but also that there's a level of sacrifice. You got to sacrifice them fingers to make that happen. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? That adversity,
yeah.
Impossibility, adversity,
that's cool.
Success, foundational rock, and then also just the simple word grit is really important, because CrossFit is for people who want to actually get fit, and there's millions of ways to get fit. I'm not one of those people who's like, man, this is the Bible. Mm-hmm. I found something that works for me, and I try and offer something that might work for you, and I accept that that's not for everybody, because grit is involved. Like, I want to give a bit of me every day in a workout. Do you know what I mean? And I want to see what I'm made of sometimes. Not every day. Not every day's a trial. But do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you not find that in CrossFit, that little bit of, fucking hell, can I do this? Is actually one of the most important components of the workout. Because when you prove in a tiny little way that you can overcome that little bit of adversity in a workout, and you prove that, 500 times, the compound effect of that is that you are a vastly superior person from probably who you were. And I like the gritty aspect of it, so that's what I called it.
That's cool.
There's more to it, I suppose, than just...
There was definitely a lot more to it than what I was expecting you to
I know.
say.
Yeah, mate. I told you, I look like a moron, but sometimes I think...
That's so funny. I was like, yeah, we'll just say grit and stone. And then that's cool.
Yeah.
How did let's say out of curiosity, you have... I know that, I don't know about... Instagram obviously is this whole new thing when you started your CrossFit gym, it wasn't as much of a thing. It's become
No.
much bigger thing over the last 5 years, for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, we know, we who do CrossFit, you know, the big CrossFit guys have got, I don't know, 100, 200, 500, a million followers on Instagram. So you're 18, 20,000 or something.
I'm a small fry, yeah.
Is moderate in comparison to those people.
No,
but in the UK,
I would say I'm small fry, except I feel like perhaps what I've got is a very, very niche aspect. So I feel like, say, Zach's a good friend of mine, and he's very inspirational to me in his content.
we're talking about Zach
George.
Zach George, yeah.
And perhaps one of the reasons is because he can express his fitness in a way that it appeals beyond CrossFit. It goes into other borders where across all types of fitness, you can watch Zach and be like, oh my gosh, that guy can express strength and endurance and things on a level that is relative to bodybuilders, it's relative to triathletes, it's relative to all these different people, because you can just see it. Do you know what I mean? And as a result, he's got a broad following, a very diverse following that appeals to many people. I feel that what I've got is a very CrossFit following. Exactly what we're saying about like that's those type of people. I'm with the kind of like, I suppose I would like to think that perhaps I'm slightly, reflect a slightly counterculture to general fitness. Perhaps I'm a little bit, I don't want to be part of that mainstreamness. And I couldn't be if I wanted to. It'd be flattering myself to say, oh, I could appeal to a broader range of people if I wanted. I couldn't. I can't. Do you know what I mean? I don't have that appeal because I'm not. So perhaps my followers are probably just, they're more CrossFit based, they're more strengthy based, they're probably more men who are in a same age category as me. They're probably people who give less of a care about how the hair is or how they've shaved the chest or whatever. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
And they're perhaps like, they like decent coffee and they like, you know, quality time and they like other things that it's not for everybody.
I think you embody the idea of you do you, don't you? On your Instagram. You be you.
I would love, that's not lie. I would love if I appealed to 1 million people. How good would that be? My life would be so much easier. Imagine getting a girlfriend if I had that kind of more broader appeal. Do you know what I mean? But instead, I'm stuck in my flat on my own with my 16,000 and my little niche market. You know what I mean? But it's true. It's true. Like that's why I think my following is
with your mirror pose,
with my mirror pose, with a tricky selfie. Because like ultimately, I think that's what it is. So when we talk about different followerships, I think that it reflects Zach's wide and broad appeal because he's an
inspirational dude.
Yeah.
Like I've said to a bunch of people now because, you know. One of the things that I've done with everybody I've spoken to who's been on the podcast so far is pretty much asked everybody at the end, like, who would you recommend me talking to? So that's how I went from interviewing.
But imagine you're a bodybuilder. You can look at Zach and be like, I want to look like him. Imagine you're more into gymnastics area. You'd look at a guy the size of him and be like, look how he moves. If you're a weightlifter, man, that guy just power cleaned 165.
Like it's nothing as well.
Like it's nothing.
Yeah.
So you've got these different areas that he crosses into, whereas again, like I don't have those capacities in the areas that he does, which means we don't have that general appeal, and that's
this is why you're saying there's no one that follows me then, because I'm not good at anything and I don't appeal to anyone. I get it, right? Cheers,
well,
Rick.
I did get the bonus.
Life
though.
lessons from Tricky Ricky.
Because the other bit of my Instagram went bigger when I obviously ripped the I can't say that word, but I took the mick out of Dave Castro quite famously before and during one of the opens. I also got quite a bit of following from having my long hair and great big beard, and that kind of like created a bit of an image thing. I worked with Heavy Rep Gear when they were really big, and they were like the big kind of big platform within CrossFit, and that really helped. And I've been privileged to train with people that are vastly like unique, like being able to, you know, train with people like Shelley or Zach or Erin and use and that grows your following, doesn't it? Because the simple fact that I'm allowed to train with them and be part of that
you
makes
train
a big
with
deal.
them because you deserve to be trained with them as well, don't you? Do you know what I mean?
I don't always know that. Maybe I just offer literally the fact that I'll bring a decent coffee with me. But the point is that helps.
And you'll help them celebrate when they do a really heavy lift.
Oh, I can be there for that. I'll gas my mates up, yeah.
And you did, like, speaking of, because one of the impressions I got from following you was that you do seem to know a lot of people, and I remember getting quite the kick out of being taken on a tour of America watching your Instagram. which I tried to do the return for people when I went to San
Yeah.
Francisco a couple of months ago. A few people saw it. But like you did like a massive road tour with Chris, didn't you?
Yeah.
Like you're a good friend of yours. Like
it was interesting that. So me and him had probably only spent about 3 hours together before we went to America. Just individually. I mean, we made friends at Battle Cancer. There was a group of us that got to hang out, and me and Chris got along. I suppose that we both sit fairly outside of the bell curve on personality types. It's very flattering that he's a good friend of mine because he helps me a lot. And I remember we hung out that day. It was great. Went out for dinner with a few friends. Great. Went up for a training session one time. Hung out. And then he turned up at my box one day. And I was like, Jesus, this is awesome. This is really good. Because I'm one of those people that like, you know, it sounds really silly, but I think we've all got that like imposter syndrome thing. And he turned up at the gym one day and I was like, Jesus, he must actually like me. You know, and every time something like that happens, you think to yourself like, it's quite overwhelming to make. It sounds silly, but making new friends in your 30s, like people don't make new friends in their 30s.
Do you remember the film? I can't remember what it was called now, but it had Paul Rudin.
Yeah.
And he needs a best man and he can't find a best man. So like, shout out Lewis if you listen to this. Like my friend of mine, I was telling you I met him at CrossFit Cheltenham. And I remember like for the first few months of like quote unquote making friends with him, thinking to myself, this doesn't happen to a man at 33. Like, he's not actually my friend. And then I remember he got me, so you complimented the Harry Potter picture.
Yeah.
He bought me that.
Did he?
And
That's
the card that he sent me was so touching. And I was a bit emotional about it. I was like, wow, okay. So you can make friends at 33.
This is a real friend, yeah.
And I haven't known him a year.
Exactly, a year.
And it's cool, yeah.
And I know that's the exact feeling. I think some of that is like my own personal growth and perhaps the fact that, you know, in becoming hopefully something a little bit greater that it allows you to meet new people in new areas. Mm-hmm. Equally though, it's a lonely place sometimes, like the world, especially if you are on the outside of it a lot of the time. And it's nice. Me and him just clicked talking about things where, I remember one of our friends came to dinner, there was 3 of us, and she remember me saying, she was a bit like, Jesus, like you wouldn't have known I was there for some of that. Because me and him were having a chat about like philosophy and we were talking about this stuff, about politics and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I studied philosophy only at A-level, but I studied politics as well. But I carried on learning from there because it took my interest, and he equally has found that in his life. And to find somebody else that wants to talk about that geeky stuff that's kind of feels very like outside of, I can't talk to anybody else about this. This is the only person I talk to. And oh my God, he does it too. So we end up having this dinner where for like 2 hours we just talked at each other and violently agreed on things and then violently disagreed on other things. But it was fine because it's nice to hear somebody else talk about it. And then literally, we just decided to go to America, and so I took a bit of a risk on it. Just over 2 weeks, I think it was. And he stayed out a little bit longer because he went to see a back specialist in north of the USA. And we got on really well. We both took a risk on it. We were like, if we have any problems or any fallouts, let's just settle it by having a little bit of space. We had a little plan. And we ended up having a great time. We're talking about trying to get to France in the new year. Might be a bit of a long shot because I saw some stuff nicked out the back of my car, so it might be a bit of a long shot to have that money ready for the new year. But I'd really like, we're going to try and do a little trip to France. I'd like to maybe drive across, get the Channel, then go across to Normandy and see some of those historic places. I'd like maybe going to Paris and see some of the real Paris. I've got a couple of friends over there that could show us. Because, you know, going to Paris is like a romantic breakaway. And I think like people do like the same 3 or 4 spots with the missus and never actually see any of Paris. Yeah. Paris has like got a massive, like I like a bit of hip hop to train to. And I like French hip hop as well. Which when my American, recon guy, he speaks fluent French and he put me onto this and was like, you need to listen to like French, Parisian hip hop. And I was like, what is this stuff? It's heavy. So I'd love to go and see some of Paris. And then I'd love to drive down to the south coast and visit some of those places, and then maybe finish in the Alps, and maybe try in one day surf and snowboard in the same day, and then drive home. That's something we've talked about. We just want to try and find a way to make it work.
Proper road trip.
Another one, yeah.
So you mentioned. In fact, no, I do want to ask you. Like, so when you say about being interested in philosophy, what specifically?
What do you mean?
Like you said that you studied philosophy, and you and Chris chat about that, and it was like. Specifically what?
So, for example, I mean, at the moment, it's kind of on point, on trend, isn't it, to read Jordan Peterson. and the 12 Rules for Life.
Yeah, I've not read it. It's on my list.
It's really interesting. It's really like on point to have an opinion on pronouns and gender and those kind of things. And male toxicity, I suppose you'd call it, masculinity, toxic masculinity and stuff. So we've been talking a lot about those kind of things. I've been reading a lot about those kind of things because I want to know. I know it sounds silly, but like part of my understanding, getting out of my last relationship, I felt like I had a lot of big flaws to look at, and perhaps one of them might, I don't know what they might be, to be absolutely honest with you. But I set off kind of on this thing to like I need to make this better. And I suppose that coming from the military background and being quite a guy's guy in the beards and the tattoos and the getting angry sometimes, I was like, and I started seeing these popular culture references to toxic masculinity, and then Jordan Peterson's books and the rest of the books, like Man's Search for Meaning is important to me.
Yeah, I read that.
Good book, right? I just feel like maybe it revealed that there's some work for me to do in those areas. But then equally, Chris has presented to me like, this is why you have somebody to speak to, because like I've like, maybe that needs to be, excuse my language, sorry, I nearly swore then. Maybe that needs to be wound in, maybe that needs to be addressed, maybe that needs to be suppressed, maybe that needs to be re-educated or whatever the phrase might be. And Chris is like, maybe that just needs to be reordered. Maybe that just needs to be placed better within your character. Yeah. Maybe that needs to be balanced with a different skill, not removed, but perhaps in some way balanced. Yeah. And those are the conversations that, don't get me wrong, we sometimes just sit and talk about boobs. But but sometimes,
like you just said there, balance.
Yeah, man. But sometimes we talk about those things, and I don't have many people I can talk about those things with. There must be other people who wonder about these things.
Well, I think so. It's interesting. You should say that. It's like I've meeting you guys today. It was like sat in the jacuzzi, and I think what were the two coaches that were sat with us?
So we had three coaches. We had Little Lee.
Lee was the one who sat on my right.
Hair, sat on your right, who's a stocky guy.
Yeah, and then the gent that's a police officer.
Police officer Sergio, and then you've got Carl.
So Sergio and Lee sit in, and you sit in. And I'm sat there going, I feel quite small now in comparison to these three big dudes getting in the jacuzzi. And it's like part of my struggle recently has been having a challenge with my lower back.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard of meta health?
No, but I've heard of Stuart McGill's Big Three.
So like a former.
That's the answer for you.
Okay.
I'm being absolutely a pain in the arse. I'm being flippant. If you speak to Chris had a back injury, and all I hear about every 5 minutes is Stuart McGill's Big Three.
So the guy who he was a former martial arts instructor of mine, a chap named Rob Spencer. I might try and get him on the podcast, to be fair. He does meta health. And this is one of the things he was talking to me, and it relates to trying to figure out who you are. So he was saying that part of the reason he believes that I have back pain is that it's a symptom of basically growth as a human.
Yeah.
Like the same way that if you train your backside, let's say you did Murph,
yeah,
like there's growth involved in that.
Yeah.
Because there's the pain when you're suffering in the workout, then there's the pain that you experience because you grow overnight and then you wake up and you ache.
Yeah.
And there's that growth equals pain.
Yeah.
And he was saying that it's a growth of my character, which is why I have the lower back pain. But it's just interesting to think to yourself that, yes, like I think the more self-aware you are as a human, the more things that you can become aware of. Sometimes it's almost like, is ignorance really... Well, ignorance is bliss.
Exactly like we just said a few minutes ago when I talked about intelligence and current affairs and the state of the world. Mm-hmm. And I said, I can't put that back in the box again. Mm-hmm. Exactly like you're saying now, like there's levels of awareness that you wake up to, like you're saying now, that he's put this idea to you that it may be to do with a level of growth. And that when you start to really ponder that and really sit that within the context of what all your beliefs are and all your things, and you can be like, actually, I can see perhaps where that might fit. You can't put that back in the box anymore. And you've now got to somehow assimilate this great, massive new idea that physical pain or physical growth or physical development maybe acted on something that's so much more intrinsic than muscular, like tension.
Yeah, 100%.
I put my muscle under tension, I grew. What if things grew? I mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily my perspective.
Yeah.
I'm just being devil's advocate, but I mean...
I think it was more just a case of some of the things that he said. I went,
yeah, man.
It's like he's been watching me for the last few months.
Yeah.
Like, I've talked to you about, it's challenging doing this podcast sometimes to to get people to buy into what I'm doing, because essentially I'm a very little fish with a small podcast, doing my best to speak to people in a bigger pond, the bigger fish, do you know what I mean?
Everyone's a little fish.
And
the thing is as well is being a little fish, like, only matters in the thing that matters to you. Like, I'm a little fish. I've got a lot. Relative to people in this room, I have more Instagram followers, but I don't care about Instagram followers. I care about CrossFit success and podiums. I care about literally winning things. Yeah. And compared to the people that I like to hang around with, I'm a little fish because they win a lot. You know what I mean? And that's all that matters to me. Like, you can say, you know, I'm a little fish. You're a little fish at podcasting, and you might feel that way. Not compared to the guy who's only just started. And equally, you might feel that way towards Chris, but I mean, he might turn around and say, I feel like a little fish. Why? Well, he's just put this guy in his podcast and I can't get an email response from him. Like, everyone's, whether you're a little fish or not, is totally dependent on where you put what basket you put your eggs in. Yeah. And I feel like a little fish every day sometimes.
I guess also it's thinking that feeling like a little fish is one thing, what you do with it is another. It's like if you think about man's search for meaning, being in a concentration camp is one thing, what you do with it is another. And I'm not comparing podcasting to a concentration camp, but my point being that it's a choice to how I feel about that.
Interestingly,
you know what I mean?
like one of the phrases you mentioned Chris, and one thing I said like it's good to have a friend and good to talk. We should say
Chris Williamson.
Chris Williamson. He has the Modern Wisdom podcast, and he works through Instagram account to develop like awareness, mindfulness, as well as other bits and pieces. But one phrase that he's given me over the past couple of years is skin in the game. Like, he would say, podcasting is something he's becoming better at, and he's becoming more experienced at and more professional at, and he would say his skill is obviously rising in that. And I think that he'd back himself, so I'm pretty good at it. If you asked him about club nights, he'd tell you there aren't many better. Well, he wouldn't tell you that, he's too humble to tell that, but he might say that to me in the private of our conversation. Yeah. Because he'd say he's got skin in the game, and a lot. Okay. Equally, if you turned around to me and said to me about, like, you know, say it was as an athlete, I might say I don't feel very good at that. But then again, I haven't competed a lot recently, and I haven't done a lot on the floor, and I haven't been to the places I need to go, and I haven't had the experiences I need to have to become the person I want to be. But if you turn around at coaching and say, how are you at coaching? I'd be like, well, you know,
you've got skin in the game.
I got skin in the game, man. And that's what makes me feel like I'm not a big fish, but it makes the entire context of being a little one out of the window. There are no little and big fish, because all I know is I've got skin in the game, which makes my opinion as worthy as anyone else's. I'm willing to, mine, you know.
He makes the analogy of swinging the bat. I think it's the same thing he's saying. Yeah. Have you been out and struck out before, or are you still sat on the bench?
But sometimes he just reminds me, like, you know, have you got skin in the game? Yeah, right then, you know, follow that up then. Go with it. You know, you can. That entire fish analogy is one of those classic things of, like, the mindfulness that we're talking about, the growth we're talking about is like, that's not a useful analogy to us, and that's a feeling that we can probably learn to eradicate and stop thinking of ourselves as, you know, minor or major or whatever else, and maybe just give yourself a break and think of yourself as, I am new to this, or I could be better at this. But that's I know I'm getting a bit down. No. That has been my past couple of years, trying to get the things that make me, perhaps things that make me angrier, the things that make me feel weak or useless. You know what I mean? Like, feeling useless and stuff at things are the things that probably brought out a lot of the negative characteristics, like maybe hypermasculinity, like getting angry or
I think what they do, I think they reveal your previous programming. Yeah. Like, they reveal it's like, speaking of Jordan Peterson, I don't know, in my mind, I kind of put his book or his type of book together with the chimp paradox. Yeah. Have you read any of that?
Funnily enough, the chimp paradox was mentioned today, and I said I got halfway through and didn't like it.
But just the only thing the main thing I've taken away from that consistently, my girlfriend and I feel very fortunate about our relationship, and one of the things that we use from that, and we only read a few chapters. Yeah. If I'm feeling insecure, or if she's feeling insecure, we'll turn around to one another and say, "My chimp is not happy." Yeah. Versus, "You're pissing me off," or "You've upset me." It'll be my chimp's unhappy.
Absolutely.
And to assuage someone's chimp, which is their previous programming from a previous relationship, is very different to "you've upset me."
That's that same thing, I think, of like learning. So you're kind of starving it. If you can find a way to move away from those insecurities, like, I feel like a little fish, or even worse, I feel like a big fish. Now, that is a dangerous mentality to have. Then all of a sudden you're going to start. That's where, for me, especially, a lot of those poisonous attitudes or actions probably came from, either thinking I was a big fish or thinking I was a little fish. And as soon as you can remove yourself from that and just be more like fair or reasonable about the qualities that you have and the output that you have. Like some days, we know it's like, I go in some days, I work hard every day, and some days I get a lot done, and some days I get nothing done. The other day I got nothing done, and I felt useless. All I can say is I felt useless. I'd worked all day, and at the end of it, I had nought to show for it. but some days you have those days, and that's not a value of me that day. I worked just as hard as the day before. Cool. Just now happened. And you know what it's like. Some days you can have those breakthroughs where you've been working on something for ages, and all of a sudden everything's lined up, and everything falls like dominoes in a line, and bam, 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 bam. You're Mr. Successful today because that's done, that's done, that's done, and that's done. Another time you're just still lining the dominoes up. Really. You've only got to meet it further, but it feels like you put work in for a mile. I
kind of think about it like when I've been doing quite a bit of rowing as my cardio.
Oh God!
And the thing I quite like about it is sometimes you row and you go like, that calorie hasn't moved.
No.
And then you would do one more pull and it moves 3.
Yeah,
so it's a similar principle.
That's why I hate rowing.
So you mentioned about if you've got a comparison towards athletes, you feel or can be prone to feeling like a small fish.
Yeah.
But I've got the impression from the brief conversations we've had and from following you on Instagram, I don't feel like competing has been your focus for a little while.
No, it's not.
I get the feeling that what's been your focus is trying to be a good dad.
Yeah.
That's like, and we don't know one another well.
No.
But
it depends. Like, I've had to... it's hard to phrase fairly on a subject that's not this emotional, but like...
Feel free to tell me to start off and not talk about this, by the way.
No, but... No, it's more to find the right words for it, because no one's really asked me that before. I've had to work hard to be a dad, if you know what I mean. So...
Well, you look to me like... So again, I know that Instagram is this thing that people post their best bits. They don't post their worst bits. But
training, being a dad and training and competing was easy when being a dad was on a plate for me. When you remove my ability to be a dad and I have to work for it, then all of a sudden training and competing is very much a secondary focus. So it's taken me this long to become secure that I would continue to be a consistent part of my son's life. So,
but I think it's like it throws into perspective, doesn't it? What's important in life?
It's not that. I mean, it's not an important in life thing. I don't think. I think it's very, very short term. If you know what I mean. Like, you know, I want to know that every week I'll see him. I want to know that every week I'll be involved. And until that was secure in my own mindset, you know, training's just a bonus.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So, I feel like I felt up to maybe a couple of months ago, it was pretty locked in. Maybe up to this summer, it's pretty locked. I got to this summer and I was like, right, I've got this down now. I'm in here. We're all fine and everything's consistent. And I trained for 6 months pretty hard. Mm-hmm. I put in probably one of the best opens I've ever done, and I put in a couple of good competition results there as well. Won a couple of bits and podiumed a couple of bits. And that's the first time I've walked into competitions and walked in and been like, you know, I can have this.
Yeah.
And that was because for 6 months I felt confident in where I was and what I was doing. So I allowed myself to refocus on training and make sure I was getting it done. And the goal will be for next year probably to significantly elevate my results. You know, I would like to not a little bit be better. I'd like to be vastly better. I'd like to be on the top 50 in the UK, and I'd like to be in contention. You know, for one of the higher level in the world for my age category. Now I'm 35, and this year, and you know, I don't see why I can't be really having a good go at being in one of those spots where, you know, people who could go to the games. I'm not saying that's possible, but I'm saying like I'd like to try and see if it was. But that requires me being a dad being cemented down, because otherwise I'm not. You know, I can't bring my. It sounds silly, but I can't bring my whole self to train. I train with distraction and with thought elsewhere. And to be an elite athlete nowadays, every training session has to mean something, especially when I'm running a business at the same time and I'm trying to do these things. So if I only get 90 minutes to train, other people are getting 2.5 hours. In that 90 minutes, it has to be 100% focus and effort to get value out of it. And quite simply, there have been days when I've come in after a disruption in a different part of my life, and then had to, and just not had the ability to simply think. I started warming up, I started moving a bar, found myself moving terribly, or just literally not caring about it, and therefore I've just stopped and been like, this is pointless. Because is this making me physically healthier? Probably not. Is this making me mentally healthier? Probably not. What would be better to do right now? Ask yourself, Richard, what would you be better to do right now? And sometimes the answer is, you know what would be making me feel better right now? I'll give a gym a good clean. I'll go and do the toilets. I'll do the whiteboard. I'll do the bits. And that way, when people arrive into my facility, I'll feel at least that I have squared away the coaching for today and my responsibilities here, and that makes me feel better. But training or doing a snatch just feels like so insignificant. Do you know what I mean? And it's to do with focus. So what I'd like to do is, and I think we're getting there. Don't forget, it's you got to try and be fair, because I bring as much disruption to myself, I would imagine, as anyone else brings to me when it comes to being a dad. But some of it's emotional instability, I would imagine. But the point being is, this year I would really like to have that nailed down. I think we all would in that situation, and I'd really like to move forward and be able to train like I used to with passion, because I have the best time when I train. I can't express to you. It's like dancing.
You've mentioned dancing a few times.
Yeah.
Is it as in? So I've watched your Instagram, and you dance and you sort of play around. But yeah, do you mean specific?
I danced from being 3 years old.
Yeah. So what type of dancing?
Samson dances already now. He's 3.
What dancing does he do?
Modern and tap.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Is that what you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I danced in musicals. My coach Carl is a professional dancer. My coach Carl has had a 20-year career that you've just been like my coach Carl that you've just been
the one that disappeared.
He's just finished this year in his last professional production. He was in the Bodyguard tour in Europe. 20 years of professional dance. He's
the one that wasn't in the jacuzzi with
Yeah,
us.
he's got twice as many followers as me.
Oh my life.
He's the like when I come in my gym, the most followed person in the gym is Carl, and he's a professional dancer, beautiful dancer. One of the reasons we get along so well is that shared feeling of expression. Like me and Carl really connect on a very very deep level, on the basis that we both love self-expression. We both love music. We're both very emotional people. We're both very passionate people. We really found each other, me and Carl. He's like one of my best friends, and I only met him like 2 years ago. Someone put us into that. They were like, you need to go and train down with Tricky. Have a really good time. And he looked at videos and was like, do I really need to train down with Tricky? Like, he does not look my kind of guy. He looks kind of like a white nationalist from the US of A. Like big beard and tattoos and that. But like, we are unbelievable case. But also, but dance and music and stuff plays a big part in what I feel like my physicality is. Because my followers feel that way, I think. Like, we train because it's part of us. Like, one of my guys at the moment is going through a situation where he's got to decide whether he's going to have an operation or not, a major operation. And it's really risky. And we've talked about it, and one thing that we keep talking about between he and I is that he can't switch off his physicality. So like I said, it matters not like how much risk there is involved, because the risk that's really concerning is that he might not be able to move. And by move, I mean run, jump, play a bit of touch rugby, play a bit of football, throw a barbell, come in and walk on your hands. Like, that's not life anymore. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what to do if you make me sit still. And I don't mean just sit still, I mean like literally, what if he can't get his heart rate above 150 BPM ever? How is he going to be the dad that I know that's inside of him, which is the most hands-on, physical, fun guy, when he can't get his heart rate over 150? He can't. That's not him. He cannot be that person. So the risk isn't necessarily of will the operation be successful, it's can he continue his life without physicality? Because it's not getting fit, it's health and it's expression.
Yeah. So I think we were talking before we got on record and stuff about you had someone that spoke to you, and the impression we were discussing was you've got people who do follow you, who've found it easier to connect with you when you've been, at least to the social media world, visibly
depressed.
Well, I was going to say suffering more, but yeah. So at the moment,
Joey Taylor calls me the CrossFit emo.
I like that.
Yeah.
So What are your, like, do you have any tactics and things like that you can pinpoint that you do
that consciously
make me feel better? Yeah. Is there anything conscious that you do?
I'm better now at realising that
thing?
I'm getting into a darker place. Like when the black dog's near, I can see it. You know, you can feel the black dog's near sometimes, and I feel like that's a really important skill to know that there are things that will affect, like you can see that effect coming in. I can now identify there's a level of stress or upset or discomfort or something bubbling away. And as soon as I can see the black dog, then we can start to do things. Like exactly what you're saying. So what do I do? So one of the most important things is that, like, I have a smaller, truer group of friends than I ever have. And they really understand what it's like just to pick up the phone and have 20 minutes. Because with your proper friends, I don't need someone to ask necessarily how I am. I don't know how I am. I know there's something going on, but I don't know what that is. So Sean, a good friend of mine, social commando on Instagram, former army commando, I think it is. He's seen lots of action and lots of exciting things across the world. If there's an exciting man to speak to, he's one of them. But he also now runs social media, and he runs fitness events, and he runs mentoring online. And that's how we met. Turns out, though, sometimes I can phone him up when the black dog's there, and we can chat, and he can slowly be like, "You okay, mate?" Yeah, I'm okay, I think so. I'm just feel funny. What's funny about it? I don't know. Well, what have you done this week? Well, I'll start talking about it, and then we'll have a laugh about something, and I'll say, that really pissed me off, or that really upset me. And he'll say, did it? Why? What's going on? And then before you know it, in a conversation, we can just not. I don't need to cry on the phone. I don't know what's wrong with me. But having a really close friend who just knows sometimes, just unpick the right stitches, just to see where it's gone wrong, and then allow you to come to terms with yourself and express it, and then be like, I'm just stressed about the thing. You're just stressed about it. What can we do to make you less stressed? You need a bit of planning. Why don't you sit down for 2 hours this afternoon, put your earpods in, do a bit of planning for that, get it off your back, and then see how we are tomorrow. Or even something as simple as, that person's upset you. Send them a message and just say, you know what, you've really upset me with what you said the other day. And I really want to talk about it. Because I'm not someone who's afraid to have a conversation, but sometimes I don't know this conversation needs to be had. So what I've done is, I think the tactics, first things first is, have a real conversation with a real friend. And people say you have to be face-to-face. You don't. You can get on the phone. Just in the timbre of someone's voice, you know they're there.
Yeah.
The second thing I know I need to do is usually it's not go and try and train through it. It used to be. These days, what it probably is actually step down a step, take myself a peg down, put some music on that I like, maybe start doing some work, maybe read a book. And whilst I'm doing the bits and pieces, like the meditative activities that I do, let that thought or whatever it is come to the surface. The final thing I need to do is usually not get angry at myself for being useless or crap, because thinking that because I'm upset I've done something wrong, or that I'm spiralling downwards, or everything's got the better of me again. Because I used to just think I was a terrible dad, a terrible business owner, and a useless athlete, on a regular basis. What you realise is you can have the feeling of it's all going a bit Pete-Tong in an area, and realise, actually, Richard, maybe it's just one thing that you haven't done that's stressing you out because you're being silly. Like, have you tidied the flat? Are you living in a mess? Right then, tidy the flat and the mess that you're living in, like a grown-up, cook a proper dinner, get to bed earlier. Oh, well, look, tomorrow don't you feel vastly better? Whereas 12 hours before, I'd have sworn to you, it's because I'm a terrible, incompetent human. Do you know what I mean? The simple things. So what would I do? Speak to a true friend, truthfully. Take it down a peg. Listen to some music. Let those ideas come to the forefront of your mind. Do the simple stuff. Go to bed early. Drink enough water. Cook yourself a proper meal. Don't go out for it. Try and get off your social media, because seeing what other people are feeling won't tell you what you're feeling. Try and do something that's in some way proactive or beneficial for yourself, because even if it doesn't get to the root of it, you'll at least wake up the next day feeling like you've done something to better yourself. And I don't mean like a self-help book. I mean something literally like sit outside 5 minutes with a coffee. Why? It's nice to get fresh air. It's good to get sunlight. And you can literally feel better. I don't know about you, but I can feel like an absolutely buzzing, top-level adult because I took 5 minutes of sunshine and fresh air and was like, haven't I got a grip on the world today? Do you know what I mean? Write a to-do list. Why? Because successful people write to-do lists. And in writing a to-do list and organising your thoughts, you'll think to yourself, wow, I am on it today. The basics are the bits that get you the furthest, because they're the bits that make the biggest difference. A to-do list gives you a list of things that you actually get done. Looking at your navel for an hour, asking yourself, listening to emotional music and Radiohead, like we said, that's only going to get you so far to a solution.
I said it wasn't Radiohead, it was Slipknot.
It was Slipknot, sorry. But do you get where I'm coming from?
Yeah, 100%. It's cool.
Don't wait for time, by the way. Like, it's just, the guys are watching the football.
Who is it? Did you say it was City playing?
Yeah, City playing. All the lads are, well, Carl's not. But,
does that mean no one out of your guys is United fans?
I am. And then the two lads
yes,
are massive City fans. We got a lot of big City fans in the box, which is hilarious because our Christmas party was the same day as City United. Now I understand
that was a good day.
Yeah, I understand they got beat. So yeah, but yeah, they're big City fans.
So yeah, I mean, with regard to the whole, I've been struggling quite a lot with not being able to train.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a conversation with somebody the other week. It's like if someone was to ask me like what makes you, I was thinking like because I've been finding myself quicker to anger than I am used to, so I'm aware that is a thing. And I remember like being asked, well, what makes you angry? And I'm like, nothing's making me angry. And someone gave me this awareness that anger is a secondary emotion, and they said, why don't you ask yourself what frustrates you? I just reeled off this list of like 5 or 10 things, and the first one was, I am frustrated that I am not able to train the way that I used to.
Yeah.
And given everything that you've talked about and how aware you are about going through these kinds of things, I mean, I'm not going to sit and try and pretend I've ever been depressed, but how would you manage that? Have you ever been through longer periods of injury? I mean, I'm talking, like, it's because it's my back. We're talking 4 months.
I still have a torn rotator cuff, torn labrum and torn cartilage in my shoulder.
Okay.
And it's taken... we still have to manage it.
Yeah.
Because the surgeon wouldn't do the surgery on the basis that it probably wouldn't vastly get better.
Okay.
So we have to long-term manage that. And for a long time, like 6-7 months, I couldn't put anything over my head. I couldn't really do anything. I've had that, and I've had multiple injuries, I suppose, over time. But I cannot relate to a back injury because again, Chris has got quite a major back injury. You've got a major back injury. These are injuries that are different to my shoulder. I mean, I lost sleep because I couldn't sleep properly, which I would say like is a big life effect. But back injuries, like, what if I can't? For me, as I understand that, I can only understand that it must be unbelievably frustrating to not be able to pick something up off the floor like you want to, or literally just twist or move.
Yes. So it's more. It's also, I think. Do you know, like, you get a cold, and if a cold lasts 2 or 3 days and then goes, you don't really stress about it.
No.
If that cold was to last a week or 2 weeks, the longer it goes, the more you're like,
it's just debilitating.
Is this a cold? Is it worse than a cold? Is this cold going? You start to stress about the. I find it hard, harder to be like, I mean, is it going to get better?
So,
is it going to go away?
I think there's a huge thing for me, like, in the ability to express myself through strength. So I like to lift. If you removed lifting from me, like, this is what I was saying before about like self-expression, like, I don't know how, I'd have to find new avenues to express anything that I get out of pulling a heavy bar. Because I'm not, I know it sounds silly, but I'm not that bothered about pulling, as in like the outcome or the
there's something about it is good, isn't it?
A heavy bar. Like, I don't pull heavy bars regularly. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't regularly try and PB my deadlift because I want everyone to see I've got a heavy deadlift, or to tell myself that I've got a heavy deadlift. I just like deadlifting or lifting the heavy bar because the feeling in itself is what I need. If you took that away from me, I would be a mess. Same for frustration. So what would I say? I'd say that's the time to explore other avenues of physicality, which for me might be like twofold.
Well, you mentioned climbing. What type of climbing did you do? Harness or no harness?
No, so I've just done bouldering and stuff.
So I like bouldering, so it might be worth.
But you've got to find the same seam that hits that. Like, it's got to be quite aggressive. It's got to be something that's quite like hits the man in you. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, because if we are saying, like before about like Ty Jordan, Peter Smith, if we are saying there's a level of masculinity that's good and that's required, needs to be fed, and fed well, then. My family, men in my family have been lifting and shifting since they were down mines. And, we had bare knuckle boxers and street fighters in the family. Like, I'm like, you can't turn off. There's a level of, spend 8 hours a day down a mine. There's a level of self-expression in that, of hitting something, of moving stuff. Yeah. So I feel like twofold, you got to fix it fair. But you've also got to find somewhere to channel all of thatness. And it's not angry and it's not frustration. It's you. It's the core of yourself. Maybe I'm a guy. I don't know. Maybe I'm a guy's guy. Maybe I'm an old school guy. Or maybe I've made it all up.
I don't think you can be too, to be a guy that I don't know. Well, I was going to say to be a guy's guy stereotypically a guy's guy doesn't ring his mates up the way that you've said that you do. But maybe a guy's guy has changed, and I'm still basing it on an old stereotype. I don't know.
Most manly men I know, we said before about whether I do intelligence, and I was not someone running around a battlefield doing exciting things. My exciting things were very different than you might imagine. However, there are a few people that I do spend time with who were very exciting individuals, people who've been places that would make me piss my pants, genuinely make me fear and for my life, and make me curl up into a ball and maybe silent because I don't want to be part of it anymore. And I mean that because I know of people that have in those situations just curled up into a ball and been like, I've had enough, I want to go home.
Oh, okay.
I've got friends that have been to those places, and you can tell in the way I'm talking about, they have my hero status. They have my hero status. They're the guys that I wish I was when I was a kid. You know, when you're a kid and you look at me like, I want to be like, the guys in the films. Well,
when you read about Jack Reacher and you're like, I want to be him.
Well,
they're Jack Reacher.
I know a few of them that have done it, and they're the most manly people you can imagine. And I tell you what, I've watched every single one of them cry. I've watched every single one of them upset, because the modern man, the 2019 manly man, has probably been to war a couple of times. He's probably done some dirty deeds and stuff, but he's probably now dealing with all these emotions that we're talking about that you got to unpack, because the most badass guys of our generation are a bit messed up now. And it's an amazing new world that we're living in, where we have to now have to reflect on how this thing that we're talking about is mindfulness, like this manliness that we're talking about, the Jordan, everything. Like, how do you be a bloke that 10 years ago was running around the desert shooting people, fearing for his life and being an absolute badass, throwing grenades and jumping behind walls, to now being a person who gets in the dog's basket on fireworks night because the sound sets you off, and the only thing that'll make you feel better is literally being next to the dog. You know, that's a new world. That's a manly man these days, and we've got to accept that a manly man is both. A manly man is scared now at times, a manly man is vulnerable at times, but he's also someone that, if it all kicks off tomorrow, will be stood there ready to go again, because they are just badasses. You're still badass if you're scared. You know? It's unbelievable, mate. There's hundreds of them. No one knows who they are.
I know.
Honestly, I wish I could tell you every one of them. They're unbelievable. I've watched them. Young lads as well. My flight sergeant had a son who was a sniper, and my flight sergeant was a sniper himself, and he was out in Afghanistan with his son.
Oh my life!
And I remember one time there was a patrol out to this particular leader, and he was a bit standoffish and a bit aggressive. And my flight sergeant there was a former infantryman who'd moved to help us in intelligence, very, very experienced 30-year soldier. And they went down to do a meeting. And it was never working. It wouldn't work every time they went down. It was basically a big standoff. So one day he just took his weapons off, and just took his hat off and put his beret on, and just wandered up to the gentleman with the interpreter and said, "Can me and you just have a chat? Just you and me. Mano. We need to find a solution. I'm not here to fight. I've taken my gun off. I'm just here literally to find a way forward where we can come through this village and not be bothered, and where you can have us come through this village and know that we're not threatening or we're not trying to undermine you in any way." And an absolute, that's a monstrous level of confidence. And that's what he did. His son was out there at the same time as a sniper. And I got to speak to him a few times because I needed some information about different places. I remember one night I was sat across a table. I swear to God, he must have been 20, 21 years old. He'd come in after 3 or 4 days in the middle of the Bondu. He had what I can describe as sweat, dirt, a mix of things across himself. He had big goggle marks where he'd come back in again, a tan that kind of ended at his wrist where he was covered up, like a deep, I've been out in 50-degree heat kind of tan. And I just remember sitting down with him and thinking, this guy's like 20. He's the most bad. He literally put like rifle down, bits of kit down, unloaded. And you know when you're like, I'm just sat here with like the most savage man I've ever met, and he's about 20. He's just been out on his own in the middle of nowhere. Where are the enemy? Everywhere, mate. Now, that to me, like, you know, that's who we're talking about. These guys, you can see, I mean, they make an impact on you. They make you want to live up to be a better person. They make you want to be more and as best as you possibly can be.
Do you find that, like, do you ever use that to be inspired when you're having challenging moments?
Yeah.
Or do you find it the opposite, like debilitating because you feel like you can't live up to them?
No, I think it's a mix of both of those feelings. I've seen people rise to those challenges. I've seen people look at those tasks that we've put in front of them and been like, we'll just find a solution. You know, and we're not going to find a solution on this simple problem like, oh, the gym's got money thing or a membership thing. We're talking about like a problem where, they're at the pointy end of the stick here and there's big consequences, but they've been like, we will find a solution because we're going to have to. We're going to have to step up to this challenge. We're going to step up to this problem or whatever. So as a result, that gives me motivation to think like, just put it in the context and you can step up to this one as well.
Yeah.
Equally though, I do think that, I don't know anybody who doesn't, well, I must know some people, but for me who doesn't have a level of imposter syndrome where you're like, how am I going to operate here when really I'm just Richard, who you just used to dance and have curtains and look like he's in a boy band.
I'd like to see that picture.
Especially when I go to events, you'll see me at competitions nowadays. Like I'll just be, before a competition, I'd walk in, normally lie down on my bag, put my coat over my head and put my earphones in, and I'll have Harry Potter on. Because I just dread now this entire feeling of walking into events and people knowing who I am and thinking, what an idiot. Like, he's been depressed, he's been anxious, he's a right mess, this one over here. He's on his own, he's used to be this and now he's got this. You know what I mean? I just dread it. And I know they're not, but it's that feeling, isn't it? So it takes me about an hour to put my earphones in and calm myself down.
Knowing something logically and knowing something emotionally are very different things.
And then as soon as I get up and get warm and do my first event and remind myself I'm just there to do my fitness and to do the things I've trained for, as soon as I get on the first event, I'm 100% back to myself again. But that first hour is awful. And I think as well as the night before, I don't get nervous about it. I get embarrassed about the idea that tomorrow morning you're going to be a right state. Do you know what I mean? And I walk in and just think, I just want to go home. I never used to feel that way, but I think it's something just to grow, like you said, a bit of adversity to grow from and slowly just accept that actually maybe, you do deserve to be there. You've been through some stuff, people have come over it, and everyone kind of is accepting of it. There's ones that aren't accepting of it. There are people that are like not my favorite, that I'm not their favourite person, despite, coming over different things. They'll always think I'm an absolutely useless tool. But the thing is that that's okay as well. And also, you can find a level of amusement in that, I find. I do find rubbing a couple of people up the wrong way really fun. I know I shouldn't, but...
I try and remind myself that Michael Jackson wasn't loved by everyone.
Don't talk about Michael Jackson and me together. That guy was a paedophile.
But when people didn't know that...
What an awful thing to say. You're one of the haters, aren't you?
Did you not know?
I hate that guy.
Did you not know?
What?
Create Instagram accounts just to send you grief.
Oh, man.
They're all me.
Jesus. Can't believe it. Literally, that's going to be a thing tomorrow, isn't it? But you know what I mean? Like, I think that's a big thing. Having said that, on a totally different subject, do I enjoy winding people up occasionally? Yeah, I do. Like, I think you've got to have a level of humility. Like, especially on Instagram, if you're going to be like Insta famous and stuff, I get it. Like, a bit of ribbing and stuff. I think generally people should take that social media stuff pretty seriously. Like, I'm really aware of like the bullying online thing. I saw Sonny's post the other day about how he's treated, and I really get that. I think it's so much more than Sonny's been caught for drugs, he's been banned, let's toast him. I think it's more a reflection that on social media people will say things that are damaging to another person. Like, I am also not happy with anybody who is caught taking drugs. I'm also unhappy with unfair sport, but I'm really unhappy with using social media as a tool to attack people with almost like invulnerability. Like it's okay because it's social media. No, it's not. Like, I'm trying to be kind to people on social media, and I try and have people be kind to me. I know that not everyone loves you, but I don't love everybody else. But you know what? I can have civility and respect for everybody.
If worst case scenario, like Sonny was guilty of doing what he did, and he did it in like blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And?
Yeah, he got 7 years for it.
Yeah, but does that matter to you?
No.
Does it matter to me?
No.
But does it matter to everybody else that's watching? Like, really, in the big scheme of things.
But if we equate it to something else, like say some kid I went to school with, I don't know what he does. He robs somebody and he gets put in prison for 6 months. When he gets out, me toasted him. No, mate, he served his 6 months. And that's what matters. That's all that matters. Now leave it alone. And I'm one of those people. Now leave it alone. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's not your responsibility to hold that person for justice. Mm-hmm. Justice has been served. Whether you thought it was enough is irrelevant. Justice has been served. And I feel like when it came to Sonny, I was definitely on the supporting side of look, let the authorities do what they're doing and let him deal with that. Because that's thing that he needs to deal with. Mm-hmm. He doesn't need he doesn't need my input to tell him it's okay. He don't need your input to tell him it's a nightmare. But more importantly, I feel like social media in itself can often be used as I say, as a method to be expressive in the wrong ways. Like, it's fine to show your frustration, but like social media, I take really very seriously, like the fact that I might have a smallish following, but like I'm not promoting any of that behaviour. I try not to drag anybody on social media. And I think that I really get offended by accounts that do.
I've unfollowed people who seem to make it their personal mission on a weekly basis, with Sonny in particular, to just insult him. Like, I just had to unfollow them.
I'm just ready for positive talk. And me, like, if you look on social media, say you look at Chris, say you look at Social Commando, say you look at Shona Virtue, say you look at Rhiannon Pearson, for me, Bacon. Have you seen watch Bacon Late Weight Lift? Oh my God. You've got people, so you've got a variety of people there. You've got someone who's perhaps educational, someone who's inspirational, someone who's motivated in terms of training, someone who's motivated in terms of your lifestyle, someone who shows you bio. Like, I'm not saying I go on social media to get bigged up with positivity, but when I open it, frankly, it's like opening a book. I either want to learn something, I either want to be entertained, or I want to go away feeling ready for whatever my next thing is. So those are the accounts that I follow. A lot of people get offended that I don't follow back a lot of the times. And it's because maybe it's my own thing and I'm like, I just can't identify right now where that fits in, and therefore I'm just going to remove that distraction.
Yeah, if you're looking at it as a book, I'm the same. I like watching people, if it'll inspire me to go to the gym and train, if it'll inspire me to go outside in nature, if it'll inspire my next trip, if it'll inspire my next restaurant visit, if it'll inspire my next post to tag my girlfriend in to tell her I love her or whatever it is. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, something that makes you laugh. Yeah. I think
particularly when there's the alternative of how much, you know, you ever done that? I mean, you get on a different point of view, I imagine. But like Brooke Entz, for example, sometimes like scrolling through a few of her comments on some Instagram posts, the absolute hate that woman can get just by being herself.
At Coalition Games, I competed with her. She was with Team Heavy Rep Gear at the Coalition Games. Yeah. So we spent the day kind of behind the scenes, doing athlete stuff, just talking. And she wasn't as big as she is now, but she was massive, especially if you're across, like, I'm such a fan of CrossFit. I watched her in Fittest on Earth and was like, this woman's a tank. Yeah. So, like, she met me and my ex-missus when something was a little bump, and she'd message and ask things about it, went out for dinner. Same thing, like, I don't understand how you can... Hi, nice to meet you, Brooke. How do you do? Oh, can you do CrossFit as well? Kind of, but not like you. Do you know what I mean? Like, she basically took a massive step down for a whole day, except had the humility to do it with, like, true, like, friendship and grace. She just was kind and friendly and fun. And basically, we just had a massive laugh all day. The one time I met her, I walked away thinking, what a lass. I mean, now, and that's been pretty much the same for everybody I've met, maybe bar 2 people. In all of the time in CrossFit, like, probably only 2 people walked away from and been like, I don't want to speak to them again. Everybody else, I've been like...
Not bad average, is it?
But the best thing is that those 2 people, I thought, I don't speak to them again. I didn't think I don't like them or I hate them, I'm going to troll them. I just thought, like...
You know why that is, Rich? Because that's what normal people think. Normal people go, I don't really want to talk to that person again. That's cool.
That's cool.
That's normal.
That's cool. No, I think that definitely social media, I say Brooke, I mean... Having said that, I said this to you before, though. That's maybe the problem, is that maybe I'm playing a game that I need to analyse a little bit, because I like to give an opinion, and it's okay that sometimes that's polarising. You know what I mean? Like, I would say that we've said before, maybe a bit of an outlier, maybe not perhaps in the middle, and that's okay. I would like to think, though, that if I do put a counter opinion in, or something that's perhaps just slightly offbeat, that the answer is critical disagreement rather than hate.
Yeah.
Do you get me?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there's a couple of guys in the UK that say like, programming-wise, like, I like programming for my box. I'm only low-key, but I love to program for my box. And I've followed various programs. A good example is that there are a couple of programmers out there that I don't agree with some of the way they do things. But in my opinion, like, in a professional, critical way, like, I'd love to sit down and be like, why have you written that? For what effect? Because when I look at it from a distance, I disagree. But the answer isn't that I go like, oh, well, that's terrible then. The answer is that what I'd really like to do is sit down with their, 3 or 4 months of their program and be like, where does that fit in and what am I missing? Because you're not an idiot. I know you're successful. And I know that about, like, let's be honest, there are far more, like, people on the market in CrossFit with programs. There are far more excellent ones than terrible ones. because CrossFit seems to have people that are well educated, they're a little bit more mature perhaps, they've got more experience, that have maybe tested it on a box. You can
you also say as well, because they know that they're going to come under fire if they make the smallest mistake, because people love to hate on CrossFit, and it just makes them triple check their own.
No, I don't think so. I think if say look at the big programs in the UK at the moment, say look at like JST, say look at Warrior, say look at like the athlete program.
Yeah.
Written with different methodologies entirely. Like you could look at that program in very, very different, a lot of different ways. But all written by guys that I know to have a deep background, a deep education within not just CrossFit. We're talking about like real fitness, real science, real sport. They've all got results that are high up. So you could go for me, like I might disagree with how one of them does a certain thing, but the answer isn't that I'm right and they're wrong. The answer is that I probably just need to sit down with them and say, like, how does that fit in? Because there'll be a reason for it. I can still disagree that I think that's the most effective way to get from point A to point B, but my opinion doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, who cares if Tricky thinks that's not the most optimal way? Like, two things. One, prove it. And two, maybe you should write a program then, Big Mouth. Do you know what I mean? And I like that. I love that discussion. I literally love watching other people's programming, because I think when people say like Greg Glassman has that phrase like where the magic lives. I really think the magic is not in just putting random movements. It's how you combine them subtly to the most optimal results. And we in the UK have got some phenomenal programs at the moment. And I really love watching how different like groups of athletes are coming out, and how like, say how one group of athletes this year particularly peaking and having big games performances, one are dropping off this year, then next year it might change all over again. You see the subtlety of the strategy and how that aligns for the big battle. Love it.
So what kind of stuff have you been focused on leading up towards the end of this year? What's on the agenda for next year? What kind of things are you excited about?
So myself and Lee are working to release, funnily enough, the Gritstone programming. 5 years deep we are now, and we think we've built a reliable, proven set program that works within a more traditional framework. So rather than an athlete perspective of 2+ hours of training, we want to give people a true, authentic CrossFit workout every day that will give them all of those fitness results. And that we also know has been tested on our guys, that we know is going to work for them. We want it to be fun, engaging, but ultimately fitness building. So we're going to release the Gritstone CrossFit program in 2020 for people that want it. We'll be asked a lot about that.
Where will people keep their eyes out for that?
They'll see that through the Gritstone account or through my personal one.
Yeah.
For me personally, I'd really like to discuss, find a way for my social media to discuss some of the big topics I've not talked about for a while, things like mental health. I don't want to have to go through those big intense battles myself anymore, to have to then to be able to write about them. So this year I'd like to deliver just both like fun stuff and a bit into what I do with Samson, all my good stuff every day, but I'd still like to maybe put some content out there that can help people where possible. For me personally, though, I know it sounds like big projects. All I want is my healthy gym. All I want is my healthy training and my family. Like, I don't have any big projects.
Sounds like big projects.
Why would you? I mean, why would you? Why would you do any more than that?
They sound good.
I sound really stupid. I say that, but I mean, I don't know.
It doesn't sound stupid at all.
I literally don't know what else to say. Like,
that's cool.
Life's good, man.
Yeah, that's cool. Right, we're going to wrap things up there, man.
Okay.
But like, this has been freaking awesome. Thank you so much.
No worries.
For coming on. You are the man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is Dan Ball from Wellness Academy. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. You'll find a link on the episode notes. Just tap or swipe over the cover art. You'll also see some offers from our sponsor, Lichfield Apart Hotel. Find them at lichfieldaparthotel.com, and we hope you'll support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe. Another way to support us is to answer a short survey at yourwellnessacademy.co.uk/survey and tell us what wellness topics you'd like to hear about. I'm your host, Dan Ball. Our producer is Scott Towns, created by our executive producer, Ben Heathcote for Wellness Academy.